The story begins with a maid's hand raps sharply against a wooden door, the rhythmic thudding echoing through a grand hallway as she announces the start of a new day. Within the room, a young woman remains motionless, her face half buried in her pillow while her mind drifts through a haze of ethereal thoughts regarding an eternal struggle to reach a shared future. Her hands rest gently atop the white sheets, fingers curled slightly as if reaching for a ghost, while the maid continues to call out that breakfast is waiting for her. The scene shifts violently from the quiet morning to a windswept landscape where a young man and woman are locked in a desperate, passionate embrace beneath the swaying branches of a willow tree. The man, dressed in an ornate dark coat with silver embroidery, cradles the woman's face in his hands as he presses his lips against hers in a long, breathless kiss. The woman, Oriana, clutches his sleeves, her eyes fluttering shut as she lets out soft, muffled gasps of surprise and overwhelming emotion. She eventually breaks the contact, pulling back with a flushed face and wide, trembling eyes while her heart hammers against her ribs. She stammers out his name, Vincent, and tries to regain her composure, gesturing wildly with her hands as she questions his unusually intense behavior. Vincent watches her with a steady, almost melancholic gaze, his expression softening as he admits that he might indeed be flustered. Oriana covers her face with her hands, her mind racing with the memory of his gorgeous features and the heat of his kisses, unable to reconcile this bold version of him with the one she knows. The two settle into a more quiet intimacy, with Oriana leaning her head against Vincent's chest, breathing in his distinct scent of cedarwood. They stand by a shimmering body of water, the wind ruffling their hair as they discuss their impending graduation. Vincent tightens his hold on her, whispering his desire to simply remain in this moment forever. His tone shifts to something far more serious as he takes her hand, staring into her eyes with a heavy weight in his expression. He begins to speak about his plans for the future after they leave Large Magic Academy, but his confession is abruptly severed. The sound of approaching voices shatters the mood as Oriana spots their classmates, Hyde-Mary and the others, walking toward them in the distance. Panic seizes her as she remembers a massive error in her credit calculations for her con language course, realizing she is late for a meeting with Professor Felix. She frantically apologizes to Vincent, asking him to wait for her in the East Wing Lounge so they can finish their conversation later. As she turns to run, Vincent's hand shoots out, his fingers gripping her wrist with a sudden, desperate force. He pleads with her not to go, his face pale and etched with an inexplicable dread as he confesses that he does not want to be apart from her today. Oriana pauses, looking back at him with concern, noting his sickly complexion and wondering if he is falling ill. She offers to stay and even asks the professor for a postponement, but Vincent eventually forces a smile, releasing her and telling her to head straight to him once she is finished. Oriana sprints away toward the academy, her long hair streaming behind her as she identifies herself as a 17-year-old fifth-year student. The academy towers loom over the dark forest, with only a few months remaining until graduation. Suddenly, the sky turns black and a torrential downpour begins, accompanied by the deafening roar of a storm. Oriana huddles under the stone archways, her clothes damp as she worries that Vincent might grow tired of waiting for him. She clutches her magic staff, the jewel at the top glinting in the dim light, and hurries through the dark corridors. She finally reaches the lounge, the heavy doors creaking open to reveal a warm fire crackling in the hearth. She sees Vincent sitting in a large armchair with his back to her and assumes he has fallen asleep. She approaches him with a smile, intending to wake him, but as she reaches out and touches his face, the smile vanishes. His skin is ice cold, and his body is limp. Terror replaces her relief as she screams his name, shaking him desperately. She checks his neck for marks and searches for any sign of blood, but finds nothing, no wounds, no struggle, just a silent, sudden expiration. She collapses to the floor beside him, her wails for help echoing fruitlessly through the empty lounge as she clutches his hand, her own body beginning to shake with violent coughs. In their final moments, their fingers interlace one last time before the world dissolves into a void of stars and static. The darkness is replaced by the bright, echoing voice of an administrator welcoming a new class of students to Large Magic Academy. The academy stands as the pride of the kingdom of Inesel, a place where nobles and commoners are said to be equals under the protection of the great dragon. Amidst the crowd of new students, a young girl with a heart symbol floating above her head skips energetically toward the dormitories. Older students watch her with amusement, noting her vitality and assuming she is a fresh first year. This girl is Oriana, but she is no longer the 17-year-old on the verge of graduation. She has returned to the start of her journey, her mind filled with 7 years of memories that she refuses to believe were just a dream. She wakes up in her childhood bed, her face soaked with tears as she stares at a ceiling she hasn't seen in years. Her father rushes into the room, scooped her into a hug, and tells her she must have had a scary dream. Oriana looks at her small hands, the sensation of Vincent's death still vibrating through her palms. At the breakfast table, she sits in a daze while her father and the cook, Maggie, discuss a mince pie recipe and the local monster's dislike for papaya. She remembers the conversation perfectly, and a moment later, a bird crashes through the window exactly as it had in her previous life. Armed with the absolute certainty that she has traveled back in time, Oriana resolves to change their fate. She spends her childhood years studying herbal medicine and history, much to her father's surprise, as she prepares for the day she will see Vincent again. She questions her father about the 8 ducal families, specifically the Danzane family of the Purple Dragon. Her father confirms that Duke Danzane has a son her age named Vincent. Oriana hides her excitement, claiming she only heard about him from Maggie, while internally she vows to protect him this time. When she finally turns 13 and enters the academy, she searches the crowds until she catches the scent of cedarwood. She spots Vincent and throws herself into his arms, sobbing that she has missed him terribly. Vincent, however, recoils in confusion, looking at her as if she is a complete stranger. He gently pushes her away, stating that she must have the wrong person. Oriana stands frozen as he walks away with his friends, her heart shattering as she realizes that while she kept every memory of their love, he has returned with none. He even pauses to hand her a textbook she dropped, advising her to be more careful before walking out of her life once again. Would you like me to analyze the specific magical lore of the Largen Magic Academy mentioned in these pages? A rift deep in the ancient woods, sunlight filters through the canopy, illuminating a hand reaching upward toward the towering foliage, a gesture of longing for a time that feels impossibly distant. Vincent, clad in a dark, embroidered uniform, questions the veracity of their lineage, pondering aloud if their ancestor truly possessed the blood of a dragon. He stands beside a young woman with long, flowing hair, laughing softly as he muses on the legend of when dragons became human, admitting that while the stories exist, the truth remains obscured by time. The atmosphere in the forest shifts as the perspective widens to reveal the density of the dragon tree forest, a place rumored to bring richness to the land simply by existing. Oriana stands near the base of a massive tree, her expression shifting from contemplation to sudden alarm as glowing, spherical creatures emerge from the undergrowth. These white, wide-eyed entities, known as Mwimwi, float around the pair, their presence signaling a magical disturbance. Oriana, startled by their sudden appearance and sheer number, cries out, questioning the nature of the swarm enveloping them. Vincent remains composed, identifying the creatures immediately as Mwimwi, rare magical beings that seldom manifest in visible form. Vincent warns Oriana with a calm urgency that these creatures are dangerous in their affection. If they cling to a traveler, that person is doomed to never leave the dragon tree forest. As the Mwimwi press closer, Vincent takes charge, instructing Oriana to never walk alongside them but rather to cut directly across their line to break their formation. He strides forward confidently, his lantern swinging, and demonstrates the maneuver, effectively dispersing the creatures. With the path cleared, Oriana clings to his arm, praising his knowledge, noting that he has been dealing with the forest for 5 years. Vincent gently detaches a stray Mwimwi from Oriana's hair, explaining that a simple piece of bread is enough to pacify them. The tension dissolves into warmth as Oriana smiles, suggesting they head back to school, her hand lingering near his. The scene fractures abruptly, the forest dissolving into a classroom where Oriana wakes with a start, her hand outstretched, not grasping a lover's arm but empty air. She finds herself staring into the face of a younger Vincent, who looks at her with cold unfamiliarity, stating flatly that she has the wrong person. Reality crashes down upon her. She is a first-year student at Largen Magic Academy, in the honors class, and she has just embarrassed herself by sleeping in class. This is her second life. An instructor stands before the massive, gnarled roots of the dragon tree, lecturing the students on the history of their magic. She explains that humans are permitted to cast spells thanks to the mana bestowed by the dragons, a privilege accessed by waving a branch from the sacred tree. The students gather around the immense trunk, listening to the rules. They must choose a fallen branch to serve as their wand, but under no circumstances are they to break a branch directly from the living tree. The instructor's voice carries a stern warning to be careful as the students disperse to search the forest floor. Oriana scours the ground, her eyes scanning for a specific shape, and soon she triumphantly raises a twisted piece of wood, recognizing it instantly as the same branch that became her wand in her past life. Her joy is interrupted by a scolding voice warning her not to damage the sacred tree, though she ignores it in her excitement. Clutching the familiar wood, she spots Vincent nearby and attempts to catch his attention with a playful, rhythmic chant, waving her hand and calling out, "Danzane." Vincent glances over, unimpressed, and dismisses her overture. Undeterred, Oriana approaches him, offering to search together, but Vincent coldly rejects her, stating he prefers to search alone. Desperate to bridge the gap between her memories and this new reality, she blurts out that they are destined to be lovers when they turn 17. Vincent stares at her, uncomprehending, and asks if he is supposed to remember her. Oriana realizes with a sinking heart that he truly does not know her, not even her name, and the weight of her solitude presses down on her. Vincent turns away, reiterating his desire to focus on finding his wand, a tool he will carry for life, and explicitly states he wants to be left alone. He walks away, leaving Oriana apologizing to his retreating back. Back in the academy, a new figure enters the narrative, Miguel, a relaxed student with long hair tied back, who casually holds up a branch, claiming he knew it was the one the moment he touched it. He teases Vincent, who sits stiffly nearby, noting that seeing everyone else succeed must make him anxious. Vincent retorts that the tree isn't going anywhere and he isn't obligated to find his wand immediately. Later, in the bustling cafeteria, Oriana waits for her food, her back to the boys. Miguel spots her and asks Vincent for her name, recalling they were in the same class during the entrance ceremony. Vincent, focused on his meal, replies indifferent that he doesn't remember and isn't interested. Miguel, seizing the opportunity, approaches Oriana with a charming smile, offering her a cookie, which turns out to be an empty gesture, a mere icebreaker. Oriana, holding her tray of noodles, is flustered by his kindness but introduces herself. Miguel introduces himself in return, shaking her hand and expressing a wish for them to get along. Vincent interrupts the interaction with a sharp comment, asking Miguel what he is doing and pointing out that he hasn't decided on his own meal yet. He orders Miguel to sit down before he spills his plate, his tone commanding and irritated. As Vincent brushes past Oriana to take his seat, a collision occurs, liquids fly, and a bowl of ramen upturns completely onto Vincent's pristine uniform. The cafeteria falls silent as noodles drape over Vincent's shoulder and broth drips onto the floor. Oriana, horrified, stammers apologies, frantically offering to find a cloth or rag. Vincent stands motionless, his face darkened by the humiliation, before coldly dismissing Miguel to clean up the broken dishes. He turns his gaze to Oriana, his eyes narrowing, and orders her to wipe the floor immediately. Before leaving to clean himself, he delivers a crushing decree. If they ever speak again, he will be the one to initiate the conversation. Oriana walks alone through the stone corridors, the sting of the encounter fresh in her mind. She berates herself for being stupid, for convincing herself that Vincent would remember their past shared life. The reality that she is truly alone in this world, with her old friends and beloved father no longer knowing the person she was, overwhelms her. She stops, her attention caught by a figure moving towards the forest entrance at sundown, carrying a magic lantern. It is Vincent. Despite her earlier resolve to stay away, Oriana follows him into the darkening woods, watching from a distance as he searches desperately for his wand. She realizes that she is standing at the same starting line as all the other girls who admire him, no longer holding the special place she once did. She considers returning to the dorm, feeling out of place, but hesitates as she observes Vincent's growing distress. Vincent wanders deeper into the forest, the silence pressing in on him as the usual sounds of the woods vanish. He becomes disoriented, unsure of which way leads back to the school. Suddenly, he is surrounded by the umwimwi, the white puffballs swarming him, their magical influence making it impossible to shake them off. Panic sets in as he questions what is happening, unable to escape their lure. A voice cuts through his panic, shouting for him to come this way. Oriana bursts through the trees, grabbing his arm and pulling him away from the swarm. She explains breathlessly that he has been tangled up with mui, magical creatures that lure people deep into the forest. Vincent, winded and confused, recognizes her as the girl from the cafeteria. Oriana instructs him on how to escape, repeating the lesson he once taught her, cross in front of them to break their line. She reaches into her pocket and pulls out a cookie, not bread this time, and tosses it to the creatures. The umwimui immediately abandon their pursuit, swarming the treat instead. Oriana laughs, relieved, noting that the cookies might be too tasty. Vincent stares at the scene, admitting he has never seen anything like it before. In the quiet moment that follows, Oriana reflects on her journey. She acknowledges that the tall tales of their past love might seem ridiculous to him now, and she has no intention of forcing him to believe them or asking her father to arrange a marriage. However, she silently vows to be ready and waiting if he ever decides to fall in love with her again. She turns to Vincent and offers him a branch she found earlier, suggesting he take a look at it. Vincent accepts the wood, and his expression softens as his fingers close around it. He murmurs that it feels right, as if this wand was meant for him, unknowingly echoing the sentiment of their past connection. He looks at Oriana, really seeing her for the first time, and acknowledges that because of this wand, they were able to meet and talk. Oriana smiles, a genuine, radiant expression, and mentally bestows the dragon's protection upon him. She introduces herself properly this time, extending her hand not as a desperate former lover, but as a new acquaintance. She cheerfully lists her trivia. She likes noodles, her height is 157 centimeters, and her birthday is the 5th of the first month of winter. She asks for a handshake, marking the beginning of their new story. Vincent, holding his new wand, looks at her with a mixture of curiosity and realization, admitting that the only thing he knows about her is that she likes noodles. Oriana enduring the grueling physical demands of flexibility training within the walls of Largen Magic Academy. As she struggles through the exercises, her body reverberates with the strain of a 4th-grade do-over, her limbs protesting as she is urged to pull them apart slowly without overexertion. Despite her cries of pain, her instructor reminds the group that sudden movements place unnecessary stress on the body and that improper toe placement renders the stretching ineffective. Amidst this agonizing routine, Oriana reflects that her school life is supposedly going smoothly, even as she lets out a sharp cry during a particularly difficult stretch. The source of this physical rigor is Yana Vimahatine, the 13th princess of the kingdom of Eki Karima and Oriana's current roommate. Yana towers over the class with an air of effortless grace, chiding Oriana for slacking on her flexibility training and demanding the students demonstrate their progress. While Yana maintains that yoga is a matter of consistent effort regardless of natural suitability, Oriana collapses in exhaustion, privately concluding that such discipline simply is not for her. This marks the 4th year the two have shared a dorm room, a partnership defined by Yana's regal confidence and Oriana's frantic attempts to keep pace. Yana, known as the Star of the Desert, speaks with a casual authority that Oriana finds both intimidating and admirable. The princess suggests that Oriana's dedication to these morning and evening exercises is driven by a desire to match her own beauty and to cause Mr. Tanzane to swoon. Blushing and flustered, Oriana laughs off the suggestion, deciding instead to pivot her focus toward her academic studies. Yana offers a playful parting encouragement, noting that studying is indeed one of Oriana's charms. Stepping out into the academy grounds, Oriana carries a heavy stack of books as she reflects on her unique circumstances. Though she has physically turned 16, she is acutely aware that this is her second time experiencing this age. In the middle of her internal monologue, she fumbles her papers, which begin to flap away in the breeze. Before she can panic, a young man named Azrak intervenes, using magic to swiftly and accurately snatch the papers from the air. Azrak is enrolled at the academy specifically to serve as Princess Yana's bodyguard. When Oriana thanks him, he dismisses the feat as a more efficient method than manual retrieval, though his presence reminds her that she is likely late to the study room because of the fuss she made during yoga. As Oriana and Azrak walk together, they discuss the whereabouts of Lady Yana, who remains behind to continue teaching the other students. Azrak teases Oriana about her lack of grace, suggesting she looked like a beached shrimp during her exercises. Oriana pouts, telling him not to be mean, while Azrak admits with a faint smile that he would have loved to see the display. When Oriana invites him to accompany her to the study room, he agrees on the condition that Lady Yana eventually joins them. Upon arriving at the study room, Oriana's eyes immediately search for Vincent Danzane. She spots him assisting an underclassman with a dictionary, his natural kindness on full display. The sight fills her with a mixture of affection and hesitation, as she struggles to decide how she should even address him. Overwhelmed by her feelings, she impulsively rushes at him, surprising him by clinging to his back. Vincent recoils in shock, demanding to know what she is doing, while a third student named Miguel watches the scene with amusement. Miguel intervenes to de-escalate the situation, telling Vincent there is no need to shout. He playfully notes that Oriana worked hard on her appearance specifically to impress Vincent. Oriana beams, seeking validation for her cuteness, which Miguel provides with a smooth compliment while Vincent remains exasperated. The group's loud behavior eventually draws a stern ahem from an older professor in the background, prompting them to settle down. Vincent sighs, questioning why they cannot behave normally, but Miguel reminds him that students have the right to choose their seats freely in the study hall. As Vincent and Miguel eventually depart, Oriana watches them go, her mind darkening with the weight of the future. She knows that in her previous life, Vincent died during his 5th year at the academy. With only 1 year remaining before that tragic event, she obsessively monitors him for any signs of illness or any indication that he is hated enough for someone to want to kill him. She resolves to stay as close to him as possible, even if he treats her coldly, so that she might notice even the smallest changes in his health or safety. The academic gap between them adds another layer of stress for Oriana. Vincent is a member of the special rank, destined to inherit the Shurden domain and already proficient in magic and domain management subjects like agriculture, forestry, and finance. In contrast, Oriana's previous self was only in the 2nd class. She pushes herself to study harder, hoping to bridge the gap and remain in the same classes as him. She recalls Vincent's childhood, where he was praised as a brilliant heir with dragon's blood, meeting the high expectations of his tutors and his father. Despite her efforts to be his protector, Vincent remains a distant figure, often retreating to a worn-out lounge where he falls asleep. He is secretly aware that Oriana frequently sneaks into the lounge to watch over him from behind the door. He wonders why she doesn't simply enter the room so they can be alone, and he questions what exactly she thinks she is protecting him from. The scene shifts to a field plowing practical where the students are exhausted from manual labor. Oriana's classmates discuss the possibility of creating a magic tool that could automatically plow the fields. They brainstorm using magic paper or runes to make tools move on their own, concluding that such innovative conversations are a hallmark of the special class they now inhabit. During the work, word spreads that Vincent has found something incredible while digging in another field. Oriana's classmates remark on how Vincent always stands out and feels like he belongs to a different world, yet remains kind to commoners. They praise Oriana for her boldness in approaching someone as unapproachable as him. Oriana reflects that while he may seem like a distant moon to others, she knows he is just a 17-year-old boy who has worked incredibly hard for his achievements. When a classmate suggests inviting Vincent to eat ramen, Oriana laughs, unable to imagine the dignified heir consuming something so common and garlic-heavy. Suddenly, Vincent appears, looking flushed and overwhelmed by the heat. Oriana panics, fearing he is suffering from heat stroke, and tries to force him to drink water. Vincent, embarrassed and stubborn, insists his body isn't weak and tells her not to follow him, claiming he has his own water. As he walks away, Oriana's classmates note the incredible, rare expression he had on his face. Late that night, Oriana sits alone in her room, the scent of cedarwood, a scent she associates with Vincent, filling the air. She feels the sting of his earlier rejection, noting that while he once claimed it was love at first sight in their previous life, it now feels more like hate at first sight. She gazes out the window at the moon, longing for the past when they could sit together naturally without tension or pressure. She remembers the way he used to tell her she did well and that everything was okay, desperately wishing she could hear those words again. Would you like me to analyze the specific magical runes mentioned during the field plowing scene? A straight road stretches toward a distant horizon under a vast cloud-streaked sky, cutting through wide fields of wheat where vibrant cornflowers bloom in the foreground. Inside a sunlit room, Oriana stands with a bright, triumphant smile while 3 maids and an older woman look on with expressions ranging from shock to utter disbelief. Spread across the table is an impressive feast featuring a golden orange clafoutis served with cream, a bowl of carrot rapis, and a plate of coronation chicken. Oriana beams, reflecting on how Vince always loved citrus dishes and vowing to prepare this meal for him if they ever meet again. When the older woman marvels at her talent, Oriana sheepishly explains that she simply followed a recipe from a book, though she privately worries about having gone too far for a 7-year-old. The maids whisper among themselves, wondering if someone secretly taught her such advanced techniques since she appears to have prepared the entire spread alone. Later, Oriana sits on a stone patio with her father and a small dog, where her father expresses his delight that she took such an interest in her studies. However, his smile falters as he examines the stack of books she requested, which include grim titles like Practical Magic Studies, Extracting Poisons, Forbidden Medical Techniques, and A Compendium of Poisonings. Sensing his growing horror, Oriana quickly fabricates a story about a fairy tale princess eating a poisoned apple to explain her curiosity. Her father sighs in relief and scoops her into a warm embrace, advising her to save the poison research for when she is older and asking her to remain his sweet little cornflower for a while longer. Oriana clings to him and declares her love, yet she secretly questions his choice of flower, noting that cornflowers are common weeds in wheat fields rather than noble blossoms. The scene shifts abruptly to the present day at the Magic Academy, where Oriana's eyes widen in a sudden flash of realization. She stands over Vincent, who sits slumped on a bench looking pale and drained. While a student nearby dismisses Vincent's state as mere summer fatigue, Oriana grips Vincent's face and leans in close, ignoring the gasps of the surrounding crowd. Vincent tries to pull away and tells her to stop, but Oriana remains focused, her expression intense as she checks his condition. She suddenly announces she will be right back and sprints toward the kitchen, shouting for Vincent to wait just 20 minutes. Vincent watches her retreat with a skeptical humph, while a student with a long braid nearby asks if he actually intends to wait for her. True to her word, Oriana returns shortly and presents a dish of chilled chicken tender pasta with a refreshing citrus garnish. She explains that cafeteria meals are often too heavy for someone feeling unwell, so she prepared something light that would be easier to eat. With a playful yet determined look, she threatens to kiss him if he refuses to eat. Vincent begins to swirl the pasta with his fork, complaining that the appearance is lacking and that putting lemon on food feels wrong. He pauses, inwardly stunned and wondering how she could possibly know that he has a preference for citrus. As Vincent eats, the student with the long braid, Miguel Felvera, watches in amazement that she produced the meal so quickly. Oriana laughs and explains that she used the kitchen's existing stock and learned to cook from the maids after losing her mother at a young age. Vincent quietly admits the food is good, causing Oriana to brighten instantly. She declares she will ask the cafeteria to add the dish to the menu so he can eat properly, and Vincent watches her go, offering a soft, almost imperceptible thanks for the meal. Overwhelmed with joy, Oriana suddenly lunges at Vincent and wraps him in a crushing hug, shouting her love while he remains frozen in shock. The atmosphere turns somber as Oriana sits in the library, surrounded by heavy tomes on toxins and herbs. The librarian grants her a special borrowing permit, noting how rare it is to see a student so passionate about poisons. Oriana pores over the texts, her mind racing as she compares the symptoms of various deadly plants to the way Vincent died in her past life. She remembers that he died peacefully, as if he were merely sleeping, just like the princess from the fairy tale. She deduces that a regular student could not have obtained such rare, foreign herbs like the 12 deadly herbs, or the thorns of Yerva de Pero. Her suspicion narrows toward an adult with reliable connections, social standing, and deep medical knowledge, someone like Professor Hines from Magic Pharmacology. Lost in thought, Oriana realizes her own memories of the day Vincent died are beginning to fade and come to her only in fragmented pieces. She recalls rolling thunder and echoing rain on that day, but the exact timeline remains a blur. Looking across the library, she sees Vincent sitting next to a beautiful girl with long, light hair named Sharon Beazle. The other students gossip about the pair, comparing Sharon to a white lily or a moonflower and Vincent to a violet-eyed iris. Oriana feels a pang of insecurity, remembering her father calling her a cornflower, a mere weed compared to such noble blooms. A sudden crack of thunder echoes through the library as a downpour begins outside. Terrified, Oriana frantically packs her books to return them, her hands shaking. She rushes out of the library, nearly colliding with a teacher, and stumbles into a darkened hallway. The sound of the rolling thunder triggers a deep, visceral trauma, and she collapses against a wall, gasping for air and trying to hide from the noise. She remembers a time when someone precious to her passed away during a storm, and the helplessness she felt then still haunts her. Vincent finds her trembling on the floor and asks if she is sick or if she fell. He realizes she is paralyzed by fear of the thunder and offers his hand to help her up. Oriana tries to hide her shaking hands and tells him she will be fine once the storm passes, but Vincent remains by her side. He uses his cloak to shield her from the sight of the lightning and directs other students to pass through the hallway quietly so they do not disturb her. Sitting beside her in the dim light, Vincent apologizes for his earlier coldness and tells her that from now on, she should look for him whenever it thunders. He offers his condolences for the loss of her mother and promises to stay with her. Oriana looks up at him with tears in her eyes and a small, genuine smile, her fear finally ebbing away as she whispers that she loves him. In a lighter moment at the boys' dormitory, Miguel Felvera struggles with his morning routine, literally turning into a puddle of liquid due to extreme morning weakness. His roommate, Vincent, stares at the slumped form with a flat, unimpressed expression as Miguel begs him to tie his hair into a braid. Vincent tells him to just cut it off if he can't manage it, but Miguel insists they are best friends and fakes a crying fit until Vincent begrudgingly assists. Miguel later boasts to Oriana about his perfect braid done by his nanny, only for the scene to reveal his current hair is a shaggy, unraveled mess because he can't replicate the technique himself. Would you like me to analyze the specific types of poisons Oriana was researching in the library? Sunlight spills across a desk where an old book rests, its cover embossed with a mystical geometric emblem. The scene focuses tightly on the piercing blue eye of a young man, Vincent, as he blinks against the sudden glare of the morning. His pale hair catches the light while his expression remains unreadable, though a slight bead of sweat suggests a flicker of internal tension. Oriana, a girl with long, wavy blonde hair and a bright, constant smile, leans into his personal space and asks if the light is too bright for him. Vincent flinches back, his face flushing a deep red as he calls the light blinding, though he immediately tries to hide his embarrassment by accusing Oriana of being overly self-conscious. Oriana only beams wider, offering to switch seats so he can see his notes better away from the window. Behind them, a third student, Miguel, hides his face behind a book and fails to suppress a loud laugh at Vincent's transparent fluster. The library's quiet atmosphere shatters as Miguel erupts into a full-throated roar of laughter, clutching his stomach and gasping that the exchange was simply too much to handle. Vincent's blush deepens as he snaps at his childhood friend to shut up, but Miguel continues to howl, noting how easily Oriana manages to get under Vincent's skin. Oriana watches the two friends bicker with a look of pure joy, noting to herself that Vincent is finally starting to warm up to her in this life. She reflects on how she never saw this irritable, human side of him in her previous life, where he was always the composed and distant heir. Vincent continues to grumble, insisting he only laughed out of frustration because she is so annoying, yet he cannot stop himself from throwing her off balance with his own awkward attempts at conversation. As the day transitions toward evening, the group stands outside the grand, Gothic architecture of the Magic Academy. Vincent, recovering his noble composure, asks Oriana if she needs an escort back to the girls' dormitory. Oriana declines with a cheerful wave, pointing out that many people are still out and about. She smiles to herself, thinking that despite his grumpy exterior, Vincent remains the kind soul she has always known. However, the moment turns playful again as she teases him about being worried for her safety. Vincent immediately recoils, insisting he was merely taught to escort women safely as a matter of basic etiquette. He reminds her that she previously claimed to have no interest in the high-stakes life of a duchess, but Oriana counters with startling honesty, declaring that while she doesn't care for the title, she is very much interested in becoming his wife. Vincent stands frozen on a stone balcony, the weight of her words settling over him as the evening wind ruffles his hair. He stares out at the horizon, his silhouette dark against the fading light, and contemplates the impossible nature of her declaration. He knows his family, the Shiryu, would never approve of a match with a merchant's daughter, yet the feeling she stirs in him is not something he can easily ignore or nurture. While he broods in silence, Miguel approaches and observes his friend's internal crisis, suggesting that perhaps Oriana finds it difficult to truly rely on someone as rigid as Vincent. Vincent looks at Miguel with a mix of confusion and irritation, but his friend only gestures toward the school gate, where a new scene is unfolding. The next morning, in front of the main school building, Miguel and Vincent notice a strange absence. Usually, Oriana greets them with the energy of an untrained big dog, jumping into their morning routine with boundless enthusiasm. Today, however, she is spotted emerging from the boys' dormitory instead, looking disheveled and frantic. She is accompanied by a tall, dark-haired student named Azrak, whom she is profusely thanking for some sudden help. Vincent watches them with a narrowing gaze, his jaw tightening as he wonders why she is with Azrak so early in the morning. Oriana explains to the bewildered group that the wind blew her laundry away the night before and she had to ask Azrak for help retrieving it since she couldn't find a chair to reach where it had landed. Though she seems relieved, Vincent remains distant, his eyes fixed on her with a growing, unspoken concern. Inside the lecture hall, a professor with a thick beard and a dramatic flair begins a lesson on magic paper made from dragonwood leaves. He explains how magic circles drawn on this paper can be activated via a staff, and how the complexity of magical arrays is evolving into something akin to structured language. While the other students, including Miguel, seem excited by the leveling up of their curriculum, Vincent finds his attention drifting toward Oriana. She sits nearby, staring blankly ahead with an expression that looks hollow and isolated, as if she has forgotten her usual passion for magic. Vincent notices she looks out of reach, a stark contrast to the girl who was teasing him just a day prior. When the lecture ends, Vincent approaches her, asking if something is bothering her and offering his help. Oriana snaps out of her trance with a forced smile, insisting she was just spacing out and that there is no need to worry. Vincent isn't convinced, especially when he tries to invite her to lunch and she declines, claiming she isn't going to the cafeteria. When he persists, asking if she is eating elsewhere, his tone turns sharp and defensive. He asks her if she thinks she is the one who decides his schedule, eventually lashing out by saying that someone like her could never move his heart for better or worse. He tells her not to follow him and walks away, leaving her standing alone in the corridor. As Vincent disappears, Oriana's mind shifts to a darker subject she overheard earlier regarding a man named Professor Hines. Hines is a mysterious figure, often called a mad scientist, who is obsessed with potion development and the remains of dragons. Oriana recalls a conversation about Hines's thesis, which suggests that dragons, divine beings who govern life and death, might possess the power to revive or kill someone. Hines mentioned that while dragons are thought to be extinct, there are still those who carry dragon blood, specifically the little dragon dukes of the Anessel kingdom. Oriana pales as she realizes the timing of Hines's planned research paper, next spring, lines up perfectly with the date of Vincent's death in her previous life. Elsa stands frozen in the dim light as the crushing weight of her discovery begins to settle. She stares at a research document detailing a new drug development process that utilizes dragon genetic information for life regeneration. Her eyes dart across the checklist of materials required for the synthesis, noting that almost every grim item has already been obtained. She sees the kidney of a doe checked off and the collection of inuri from earlier that morning. However, one crucial item remains unchecked: a physical dragon. Elsa realizes with mounting horror that Professor Hines intends to use Vincent as the final ingredient for this research, fully intending to kill him to harvest the dragon blood he believes flows through the young man's veins. She trembles as she looks at the final unchecked material on the list, the Herslan rose. This flower, a perennial that grows naturally at the Largen Magic Academy, carries a tragic legend of a saint kept in chains until her death. Elsa recalls the lecture about this plant, remembering how its roots crawl long and form bulbous lumps that resemble human faces showing joy, sorrow, or anger. The plant is cursed. Pulling it from the ground forces a 1 in 3 gamble between survival, blindness, or a gradual death that weakens the victim over the course of a week. Earlier in the afternoon, Yana finds Elsa spacing out in the dining hall and approaches her with a playful greeting. Elsa, trying to mask her inner turmoil, poses a hypothetical question to her friend about a game involving a box with 3 outcomes: winning, losing, or death. Yana initially dismisses the idea as too dangerous, but Elsa pushes further, asking if she would open it if it meant protecting someone important. Yana's expression softens as she admits that for the sake of those she cares about, she would be prepared to open it, though she jokes that she might still shake with fear when the moment actually arrives. Elsewhere in the academy, Vincent Danzane encounters Professor Hines sitting alone on a bench. The professor looks weary, mentioning a thesis he is writing and commenting on the dragon hide Vincent previously found. Hines speaks cryptically, calling Vincent the Duke of the 8 Dragons and suggesting that dragons might still be alive today, perhaps even inside Vincent's own body. When Vincent remains cold and distant, refusing even to sit down, Hines apologizes for his behavior, claiming he didn't mean to touch Vincent so abruptly or make him uncomfortable. As Vincent walks away, he encounters another student, Azrak, who mentions a rumor about a 3-choice tale involving Elsa and a box. Vincent listens as Azrak describes the gamble of winning or dying, and the thought of Elsa involving herself in such a dangerous game causes him to pause, though he ultimately tells Azrak he wouldn't take such a risk himself. Back at the Academy Gardens, Elsa kneels before the blooming Herslan roses. She calculates the timing of the research, noting that the medicinal components are only extracted from the stems after the flowers fall in autumn. If she uproots the plant now, it will be nearly impossible for the professor to obtain the ingredient again this year, and by the time it blooms next spring, Elsa will have graduated and be out of reach. She realizes that without this specific ingredient, there would be no reason left for Hines to kill Vincent. Elsa acknowledges her own lack of power to directly stop the professor or harm him, concluding that her only option is to dispose of the plant herself. Despite her paralyzing fear of going blind or wasting away in a week, she steels her resolve. She cannot bear the thought of never seeing Vincent again. Elsa begins to pull at the plant, her legs giving way as the adrenaline and terror take hold. Just as she is about to commit to the act, Vincent arrives, startled to find her in the garden. He stops her, his presence forcing her to release the flower. Later, inside a faculty room, Professor Hines offers Elsa a warm drink to clear her head, appearing much more harmless than the figure she imagined. He expresses sadness that she views him as someone who would sacrifice students for a thesis, explaining that he merely wanted to ask for a blood sample through proper school procedures. Elsa reflects on her misunderstanding, feeling a deep sense of shame for her frantic actions and for worrying those around her. As Vincent walks Elsa back toward the dorms, he expresses his own anger, telling her that she could have died and that he never asked for her to protect him in such a way. He takes back his previous statement that nothing she did would ever move his heart. Elsa, overwhelmed by the secret knowledge of his impending death, begins to break down. She shouts at him, insisting he doesn't understand the danger he is in, while internally she agonizes over being the only one who knows the truth. She admits through tears that she is terrified and anxious all the time, unable to even breathe from the fear of losing him again. Despite her lack of confidence and her own trembling heart, she vows to keep trying to protect him, no matter how much she is hated or hurt, because the alternative, his death next spring, is a reality she refuses to accept. In a moonlit garden, Oriana stands trembling before the heir of a ducal house, Vincent, as she delivers a chilling prophecy that in the spring of the next year, he is destined to die. Vincent stands frozen, his back turned to the reader while he absorbs the weight of her words, his hand gripping a circular metal lantern as his gaze remains fixed on the distance. The chapter, titled "The Fading That Was Atoned For," shifts to show Vincent's face, now pale and glistening with a cold sweat as his eyes widen in shock. Oriana, her eyes brimming with tears, explains that she has returned to the age of 7 and began reliving her life over again. She confesses that in her previous life, she would probably have died too, but she remains haunted by the mystery of his passing, wondering if he was murdered, succumbed to illness, or met some other unknown fate. As she speaks, her face is etched with a desperate sorrow, her features softening in the moonlight as she admits there is no way for her to find out the truth on her own. Oriana's composure breaks entirely as she begins to sob, her mouth open in a silent wail while she begs Vincent to undergo a physical exam. She insists that she does not care if he thinks she is crazy or if her story sounds unbelievable, but she vows to stay by his side to protect and save him. Vincent remains silent, his expression unreadable, though his eyes narrow as he processes her claim that he will die on a spring day right after the ball. Oriana offers a final, heart-wrenching compromise, promising that if he hates her, she will stay far away and never enter his sight again, provided he gets a checkup. Vincent watches her with a look of profound confusion, questioning why she would go so far for him. Internally, he recoils at her words, finding them more painful than anything else because she is more important to him than anyone else. He watches her walk away, his hand clutching his own chest as he realizes he has messed up and wants to cover his ears to block out her self-sacrificing vows. The scene shifts through a series of memories where Oriana's affection for Vincent is on full display. In these flashes of the past, she follows him through libraries and hallways, shouting her love for him and insisting on studying so she can stay in the same class. She is shown beaming with a radiant, gap-toothed smile as she offers him snacks, her joy infectious as she chases after him. Vincent reflects on these moments, realizing that every action she took, every smile, every snack, and every hour spent studying, was a calculated effort to keep watch over him so he wouldn't die. He looks at his own clenched fist, the fabric of his ornate uniform bunching under the pressure of his grip. He acknowledges the stark social divide between them, noting that while he is the heir of a ducal house, Oriana is the daughter of a merchant. A wave of crushing realization washes over Vincent as he concludes that the person Oriana has been chasing and the one she truly loves is not the version of him standing there now, but the Vincent from her previous life. He berates himself as a conceited fool, dismissing his previous feelings as a hopeless delusion. He tries to harden his heart, telling himself that his only task is to ensure she doesn't die and that he doesn't love her either. Despite this mental shield, he finds it increasingly hard to breathe, feeling as though his body is being torn apart by the weight of her unrequited devotion. Nearby, Oriana continues to sob, covering her face with a handkerchief while she expresses her gratitude that he actually listened to her. She tells him she is glad she held on and tried her best just for this moment. Vincent watches her, his gaze softening into a look of pained tenderness as he realizes she has endured all this time, alone and unable to tell anyone, just to keep him alive. He decides that if he ever belittles her feelings for the other Vincent, he would be the biggest fool of all. The narrative jumps to a training ground where a new figure, Azrak Serena, stands triumphantly over a defeated opponent. Azrak is a tall, dark-haired man with a stern expression, holding a wooden sword as he is declared the victor of a duel. A group of students, including a princess named Yana, watches from the sidelines. The duel is part of a trial in Eki Karima, where a princess can choose her own future by having challengers face her guard, Azrak. If a challenger defeats him, they earn the right to marry her, though they can still refuse. Oriana, watching the proceedings while eating pasta, reflects on how she already knew about this trial from her previous life. She observes the interaction between Yana and Azrak, noting that Azrak is no longer Yana's fiancé because she has chosen to take this trial. At the dining table, Azrak remains stoic and expressionless, even when Yana tries to avoid eating her tomatoes. He lectures her on the logical necessity of nutrients, prompting her to begrudgingly eat the vegetable. Oriana watches them and realizes that Azrak is in unrequited love with Yana, just as she feels her own situation with Vincent is stalled. Later, a student named Kashiva Barbath sends Yana a gift of fireflies contained within a lantern. Oriana and Yana take the lantern to a dark bridge to watch the insects glow. Yana explains that the glowing is a courtship display, a fact that Azrak acknowledges without a single flinch or change in his expression. As the fireflies dance in the air, looking like stars sealed inside the glass, Yana decides to release them. She explains that any man who thinks he can keep her locked up like a bird in a cage is a fool, and she wants to set the creatures free so they can carry on the next generation. She laughs as the insects fly away into the night sky, finding amusement in how her arrogant suitors would react to the sight. Oriana smiles at the beauty of the moment, but Yana turns to her with a knowing, sharp gaze, calling her quite the actress and asking if they should keep acting until the curtain falls. Azrak eventually escorts Oriana back to the girls' dormitory, his presence a silent shadow in the moonlight. As he departs, he tells her to get a good rest, acknowledging that she has worked hard today. Left alone in the quiet of the night, Azrak stands in the shadows, his hand covering his face in a rare moment of visible exhaustion or hidden emotion as the fireflies continue to flicker in the trees behind him. A heavy sigh escapes Sharon as she lingers in her quarters, clutching a letter that seems to weigh upon her soul. A fellow student or attendant appears at the door to inform her that her bath is ready, but the sight of the parchment pauses the intruder. Sharon quickly deflects, folding the paper away and insisting it is nothing of importance even as the visitor asks if it arrived from her family again. She forces a polite smile, promising to prepare herself immediately, though the wax seal on the envelope remains a silent, looming presence in the room. Outside on a sun-drenched terrace, Miguel leans across a cafe table, squinting with exaggerated intensity at Oriana Elsha. He peppered her with rapid-fire questions, asking if she trimmed her bangs, changed her lipstick, or donned new earrings. He even goes so far as to jokingly suggest she might actually be a twin sister. Oriana recoils slightly, waving her hands in frantic denial as she insists nothing about her appearance has changed. While Miguel continues his playful interrogation, Oriana's mind drifts to darker thoughts of Vincent. She notes to herself that Vincent has remained tight-lipped regarding the cause of a recent death, and she observes with a mix of relief and anxiety that he does not seem to notice anything different about her at all. The light-hearted atmosphere shatters when Vincent approaches the table, his presence immediately commanding the space. He leans down, his breath brushing against Oriana's ear as he asks for a private moment of her time. Oriana's entire body freezes, her face flushing a deep crimson as a startled yelp escapes her. Miguel, ever the casual observer, simply leans back with his hands behind his head and gives them his blessing to go right ahead. Vincent stands tall and composed, his expression unreadable as he waits for Oriana to find her footing. She stammers through an excuse, her heart hammering against her ribs as she looks at his extended hand. He prompts her to take his hand, framing the gesture as a simple, necessary escort. As her fingers touch his, a surge of overwhelming joy nearly unmoors her. Inside her mind, she screams with a mixture of disbelief and adoration, wondering why such sudden happiness has fallen upon her. She feels her vocabulary vanishing, replaced only by the singular, pulsing thought of how much she loves him. As they walk through the stone corridors, Oriana clings to Vincent's arm, her senses heightened by his proximity. She listens to the rhythmic click of their boots on the floor, her mind racing with questions about what he wants to discuss. Despite having experienced more intense physical contact with him in the past, the simple act of hugging his arm from behind causes her heart to pound so violently she fears she cannot think straight. She feels a phantom ache in her lower back, a lingering reminder of previous trials. Their path leads to a heavy wooden door. As they transition through the threshold, Oriana stumbles, a small cry escaping her as she nearly loses her balance. Vincent reacts instantly, steadying her with a firm grip. In the close quarters of the doorway, the scent of cedarwood wafts from his robes, a nostalgic fragrance that makes Oriana feel as though she might float away and die from sheer bliss. Vincent asks with genuine concern if she twisted her ankle, but she can only manage a breathless no, as she tries to reconcile her desire for the walk to last forever with the urge to reach their destination quickly. Once inside a more secluded hall, Vincent produces a document, his eyes cast downward with a serious air. Oriana blinks in confusion, wondering what kind of paper he is holding. He explains that he went home over the weekend to undergo a comprehensive medical checkup. He presents her with a medical certificate, the result of the most advanced exams available in the country. Oriana scans the pages with wide eyes, her breath catching as she reads through the results. Blood tests, magic receptor scans, and liver and kidney functions all come back with the same conclusion: no abnormalities. Vincent crosses his arms, reiterating that he has told her many times he is healthy. He watches her reaction, noting the immense relief that washes over her face. Though he was initially suspicious that her constant worrying meant she was the one experiencing symptoms, he concludes that if the news makes her this happy, his trip was not a bad idea. Oriana beams, thanking him with a radiant smile and promising that from now on he must continue getting regular checkups. Her mind whirls with the possibility that if the cause of death she fears was an illness, they are already on the path to avoiding it. However, the warmth of the moment evaporates as Vincent's expression hardens. He looks her directly in the eye and states firmly that her help is no longer necessary. He declares that he does not need to be protected by her and refuses to let her be involved in these matters any longer. He explains that since he is now aware of the potential dangers, he can take precautions himself against murder or accidents. By eliminating illness as a possibility, he believes he has removed the need for her constant vigilance. Oriana recoils as if struck, her eyes filling with hurt as she asks why he is pushing her away. Vincent remains cold, asserting that staying uninvolved is for the best. He dismisses her worries as a nuisance and tells her he no longer wants to hear her say she loves him. He tells her she has achieved her goal better than anyone could have expected and that since he is no longer in danger of dying, there is no reason for her to stay by his side. Stunned, Oriana watches him turn to leave. She asks if he truly doesn't want her near him anymore, her voice trembling. Vincent simply looks back over his shoulder, his voice flat as he tells her that if that is what she thinks, then that is how it is. When she tries to protest that her love is not about necessity, he cuts her off, shouting that he told her already he doesn't want to hear it. Anger finally bubbles up through Oriana's grief. She snaps at him, declaring that she will do as she pleases and that he cannot give her orders just because he is the next duke. She reminds him that at school, status does not matter, and he cannot force her to leave. She storms away, leaving him standing alone in the corridor. Later, in her dormitory, Oriana collapses onto her bed, her body racked with heavy sobs. She feels discarded and unneeded by the person she has dedicated everything to saving. Her roommate, Yana, watches her with a mixture of dry wit and concern, joking that they will need to exorcise the weeping woman who has taken up residence in their room. Yana notes that the news of Oriana and Vincent's falling out has already reached other classes and is the talk of the school. Yana sits on the edge of the bed, kicking her legs as she encourages Oriana to get the details off her chest. She playfully pinches Oriana, who yelps in pain. Yana asks what Oriana plans to do next now that she has been rejected. Oriana mumbles into her pillow that she doesn't want to do something Vincent hates, but her entire life has been centered on saving him. Yana softens her tone, telling Oriana she doesn't have to decide right now and that she will still be right there by her side. In a rare moment of vulnerability, the two friends agree to have a pajama party that night, seeking comfort in each other's company and plenty of ice cream. The next morning, Oriana arrives at the classroom, determined to act natural. She spots Vincent sitting with Miguel and asks if she can sit next to them. Vincent doesn't even look up from his desk, his voice a chilling monotone as he tells her she can sit wherever she likes. Miguel watches the interaction with a concerned, sharp gaze as Vincent completely ignores Oriana's presence. As the teacher calls the class to order, Oriana sits in stiff silence. She realizes with a sinking heart that Vincent really is angry. He had told her to do as she pleased, but it is clear that her proximity is something he now detests. She looks at the back of his head, feeling the vast distance between them despite being only inches apart. As the lesson begins, Miguel continues to stare at the pair, wondering what on earth they are doing to each other. Oriana Elsa stands amidst the bustling classroom, feeling the weight of her isolation as students scramble to form groups for the upcoming experiment. The honors class focuses on an Emil freezing point depression experiment, yet Oriana finds herself drifting, realizing she has barely interacted with her peers because her entire world previously revolved around Vincent. She scans the room with a growing sense of displacement, questioning where she even belongs in this competitive environment. While she considers her distant friends Miguel and Azric, she remembers with a pang of loneliness that neither of them are in this specialized honors track. She spots Vincent across the room, but her feet remain rooted to the floor as she acknowledges she cannot simply approach him. Just as the pressure of being the odd one out begins to settle, the class representative beckons her over, offering a spot in their group that happened to be short one person. Oriana exhales a breath of pure relief and joins them, grateful for the sudden inclusion. The reprieve is short-lived as her new group members immediately bombard her with pointed, speculative questions about her relationship with Vincent Danzane. They pry into why she isn't sitting next to him and mockingly ask if the two are fighting or if she has already been dumped. Oriana glances toward the front of the room and sees Sharon Beazle already comfortably positioned at Vincent's side. Sharon, a girl from a different class who stands out due to her striking appearance, is rumored to be dating Vincent. Oriana recalls a past introduction where Sharon greeted her with a polite, closed-eyed smile, identifying herself as Vincent's cousin. However, Oriana grapples with a deeper, more painful memory from her previous life. Vincent once confessed that he and Sharon had been briefly engaged when they were young children. As the chemistry experiment proceeds, a sudden mishap occurs nearby, causing popcorn to erupt from Professor Heinz's head amidst shouts of alarm. Oriana, however, remains trapped in her own thoughts, staring blankly at the laboratory equipment. She spirals into a cycle of self-doubt, wondering if she is unintentionally interfering with someone else's destined love story. In her previous life, Vincent fell for her, and she had always taken her place at his side for granted. Now, watching Sharon and Vincent together, she fears she might be the intruder. The thought of Vincent falling for someone else strikes her with a sharp, visceral hatred, yet she feels like a ghost haunting a life that no longer belongs to her. Overwhelmed by the complexity of her situation, she decides to flee the study room before Vincent arrives for his usual session. Oriana slips through the halls, her mind clouded with the resolution to stop attending the study sessions altogether. She reasons that if she cannot be by Vincent's side, there is no point in struggling through the difficult honors material, as she never considered herself particularly academic to begin with. She feels the sting of being perpetually alone in this new timeline, a stark contrast to the warmth she remembers from her past. Her exit is briefly interrupted by a group of enthusiastic younger students, Edda, Constance, and Heidmary, who treat her like a celebrity, gushing over her sharp intellect and her rumored dance with Vincent at the upcoming ball. Though they are loud and lack self-control, their genuine friendliness provides a momentary distraction. Oriana smiles through her pain, assuring them it is fine before walking away, the words, "We were friends," echoing in her mind like a hollow dirge. Outside, Oriana stands beneath the vast sky, looking out over the school grounds as she realizes the gravity of her academic situation. If she stops studying and drops out of the special class, she will lose her only tether to Vincent and won't even be able to see him. Despite the heartache of his current distance, her primary goal remains his survival. She needs to be near him to protect him, even if he avoids her. She sinks to the ground near a large tree, feeling the weight of the heartless gate that seems to have slammed shut between them. Suddenly, a shadow falls over her, and she looks up to see Miguel standing there, a lollipop in his mouth and a casual, knowing look in his eyes. He teases her, suggesting that even if she stops being friends with Vincent, there is no reason for her to cut him off as well. Oriana's composure shatters at Miguel's unexpected appearance, and she lets out a heavy sigh, touched that he came because he saw how lonely she looked. Miguel, ever the seasoned player, claims he actually came because he was the lonely one, a playful lie that Oriana sees right through. He offers her a handful of candy, explaining that sweets are the best remedy for keeping anxiety at bay. As Oriana takes the treat, the dam finally breaks. She begins to weep silently, the tears streaming down her face even as she tries to maintain a small smile. She huddles into herself, sniffing and sobbing, admitting that she just felt a little too lonely to bear it any longer. Miguel watches her with a soft, patient expression, dismissing her apology and acknowledging that "a little" was an understatement. Seeking to lighten the heavy atmosphere, Oriana expresses a sudden, whimsical urge to invite Miguel to a pajama party with their friend Yana. She imagines them wearing cute pajamas, eating giant tubs of ice cream with Azrak, and braiding Miguel's long hair. Miguel laughs and leans into the idea, suggesting she just go ahead and braid his hair right now since there is no man she needs to hold back for. Oriana hesitates, feeling a bit scandalous, but she eventually moves behind him and begins to work through his long, wavy locks. She notes that his hair is slightly rougher than hers and damp from the heat, but the rhythmic motion of braiding provides her with a much-needed sense of peace. As she works, she asks Miguel why he keeps his hair so long, a rarity for men in their region of Anesel. Miguel looks up at the sky, his expression turning uncharacteristically pensive. He explains that when his hair is long, it gives him a tangible sense of how long he has lived, a physical marker of his own history. He admits he doesn't particularly like his face, so he prefers for people to focus on the color and length of his hair instead. Oriana finishes the braid and declares him super cute, jokingly calling him the most beautiful guy in the boys' dorm. Miguel accepts the compliment with a grin, though he warns her that he isn't cheap to maintain and might need her to secure funds from her father for their future plans. The playfulness eventually fades back into a quiet sincerity. Miguel admits that it is true he is lonely, and Oriana confesses that her desire to stay away from Vincent isn't as simple as it seems. She fears that making up with him now might only cause more trouble or danger for him later. She doesn't want him to get involved with her again if it leads to the same tragic end as their previous life. Miguel doesn't rush her or pressure her for answers. Instead, he simply offers himself as a constant, reliable presence. He tells her that whenever she feels like having a girls' night, or needs someone to lean on, she knows exactly who to invite. Oriana looks at him, her heart finally easing as she realizes that despite the mess of her memories and the coldness of the honors class, she is truly not alone. She whispers a quiet, "I love you," to her friend, a declaration of platonic gratitude as Miguel gently pats her head, affirming their bond. A woman carefully retrieves a shimmering, multifaceted purple crystal from the depths of a wooden cabinet, her fingers brushing against the heavy blue cloth it was wrapped in as she unveils its brilliant light. Her eyes widen, the irises reflecting a deep, oceanic blue as she stares at the object known in whispers as the divination mirror. She stands alone in a room of cold stone and wooden furniture, contemplating the legends of the Judgment of the Dragon, a myth where lovers faced grueling trials and hardships imposed by a celestial beast. She recalls the constellations of the kingdom of Anesel, specifically Aquarius, which represents the waterfall where a woman in the legend leapt during her final trial. While she remains lost in these historical echoes, the scene shifts to a brightly lit room where two men converse. Vincent sits on a plush sofa, his blonde hair catching the light as he stares downward with a heavy, conflicted expression. His companion, a man with long red hair tied back in a braid, leans back casually while munching on a snack, observing Vincent's obvious distress with a mixture of amusement and concern. The redhead notes Vincent's unusually somber mood, prompting Vincent to defend himself by mentioning his cousin Sharon, though he quickly dismisses the topic as unimportant. Vincent admits that his behavior has been childish, specifically regarding his treatment of Elsha. He confesses that while he is usually tolerant of others, he finds it impossible to maintain that same composure when it comes to her. He explains that he was raised to never be swayed by emotions, yet he feels a deep sense of guilt for ignoring her, even though he lacks the words to fix the rift between them. The red-haired man offers to mediate, but Vincent recoils at the idea, his pride flaring up as he asserts that he does not need protection from a girl. Vincent's internal thoughts are a chaotic swirl of self-preservation and concern for Elsha. He reasons that staying away from her is for the best, fearing that if she continues to investigate the mysteries surrounding him, she might provoke a culprit and end up on the brink of death, just as she did once before at Herslan Rose. He clenches his jaw, deciding that even if he were to die, he must prevent her from grieving for him. Vincent's frustration peaks as he recalls Elsha's past declarations of love, and he shouts in mental anguish, wishing to stop hearing those words because he believes she couldn't possibly mean them. He convinces himself that she likely never had any real interest in him and was only staying by his side out of some misplaced sense of duty or a desire to keep watch on him. The red-haired man interrupts Vincent's spiraling thoughts by revealing that he had been watching the entire exchange from the study room. Vincent erupts in embarrassment, his face flushing as he realizes his private turmoil was witnessed. The man then teases Vincent about jumping straight to thoughts of marriage with Elsa, despite her being a commoner and Vincent being the eldest son of a count. Vincent stammers, realizing he slipped up and revealed his deepest anxieties. His friend points out how annoying he has become, acting like a crude outsider who ignores the very girl who claims to love him. Vincent collapses into his hands, overcome by the weight of his own emotions and the realization that he cannot control them as easily as he was taught. He feels a sudden chill, a physical manifestation of his misery, while elsewhere, Elsa lets out a loud sneeze. In the girls' dormitory, Oriana is jolted awake by her friend Yana, who informs her that she has completely overslept and missed morning study. Oriana panics, rushing to wash her face and apply makeup to hide her exhaustion, noting that through 3 lives, she has become quite adept at concealing her weariness. She joins her classmates in a wand-making session, where the students discuss the different materials they are choosing. Some choose ink types for drawing formations, while others opt for natural or hybrid designs. Elsa mentions she intends to embed a crystal into her wand. However, she secretly worries about the gem she ordered, a tanzanite. She blushes furiously, realizing she chose the purple stone because it reminded her of Vincent's eyes, a fact her friends quickly tease her about. Her peers encourage her to look for a new love, suggesting that life is too short to remain fixated on someone who doesn't notice her. As Elsa walks through the hallway, she is suddenly overcome by a freezing aura. She turns to find Vincent standing behind her, his face dark and his eyes narrowed in a chilling glare. The atmosphere turns icy, and Elsa recoils in shock, wondering why he is looking at her with such intensity when he had ignored her for so long. Amidst this tension, a student named Taki runs up to Elsa to return a progress report she had forgotten. Elsa is grateful, her face softening as she thanks him for going out of his way. Vincent watches from a distance, his heart hammering against his ribs as he sees Taki reach out and grab Elsa's hand to steady her when she stumbles. The sight of them touching bare skin sends a jolt of jealousy through him. Vincent retreated to a private room, haunted by the word tanzanite. He overheard during practice and the realization that Elsa might be using his family's guardian stone. He berates himself for pulling his hand away earlier when he had the chance to touch her, realizing that if he had, his resolve to stay distant would have melted away instantly. He lies back on a sofa, sighing in frustration because he no longer understands his own heart. Suddenly, he notices Elsa sitting in a chair nearby, looking small and apologetic for being in the same space as him. They lock eyes, the air between them thick with unspoken words and the lingering chill of their fractured relationship. The quiet sanctuary of the East Wing's lounge, where a heavy atmosphere of unspoken regret and lingering tension persists between the two figures. Vincent stands before Elsa with a look of stunned realization, his hand hovering near his brow as he processes her presence in a room he expected to find empty. He admits his surprise at finding her there, noting that he believed she was heading toward the study room, yet here she remains, tucked away in the solitude of the lounge. Elsa averts her gaze, her silhouette cast in a profile of deep sorrow as she apologizes for her presence, her voice small and trembling as she explains that she had been using this space occasionally when she sought to be alone. The weight of her isolation strikes Vincent, who realizes with a pang of guilt that she likely sought this remote wing specifically to avoid him. As she prepares to take her leave to grant him the space, urging him to relax and take his time, he catches sight of her eyes, red-rimmed and glistening with the unmistakable traces of recent tears. Vincent freezes, the silence between them stretching as he struggles with the internal conflict of his own making. He watches her closely, noting the way she shrinks into herself, and wonders if the encounter they had earlier in the day had driven her to this state of despair. He offers a tentative hand, a gesture of support, and suggests that he is willing to listen if she needs to unburden her heart. However, Elsa recoils slightly, her expression hardening into a mask of polite distance as she insists that she is doing just fine and that there is nothing he can do for her. She turns away, but the movement only serves to heighten the turmoil within Vincent's mind. He reflects on his own stubbornness, acknowledging that he had seen her enjoying herself with others and responded by withdrawing into a cold, silent distance. He blames himself for the rift that has grown between them, realizing that his inability to speak properly and his tendency to get angry in isolation have only served to push her further away. Even as she attempts to brush him off with a cold dismissal, Vincent finds that he cannot simply walk away and leave her to suffer alone. He braces himself for further rejection, deciding that even if he is humiliated or treated with frostiness, he must attempt to bridge the gap. He asks once more if there is truly nothing he can provide, But Elsa interrupts him with a sudden, desperate plea. She turns back toward him, her eyes wide and pleading, and asks if he will listen to a single request. With her hands clasped together in a prayer-like gesture and tears finally spilling over, she begs him to stay, her voice cracking as she implores him not to leave her side. Vincent stands paralyzed by the raw vulnerability of her request, a sharp contrast to the composed man he tries to be. The air in the room shifts as Vincent finally settles into a seat near her, clearing his throat awkwardly as he tries to navigate the overwhelming surge of emotion. He watches her in the dim light of the lounge, realizing that he might have been subconsciously waiting for this very moment, waiting for her to cross his path so that he could finally say the things that have been rotting in his silence. He looks at her and sees a multitude of questions he wants to ask, about her relationship with Derek, about why she was crying, and about the misunderstandings that have plagued them. He steers the conversation toward a memory of the herb garden and a submission they made during magic pharmacology class, trying to find a safe foothold in their shared history. He reveals that he was the one who found a certain item, a revelation that seems to shock her. As they speak of magical creatures and unicorn horns, the conversation momentarily lightens, touching on the nature of unicorns as proud beings that only trust those with pure hearts. Vincent cracks a self-deprecating joke about his own lack of readiness to die, noting that a unicorn would likely try to skewer him if it saw him as a man. Yet, the levity is short-lived as the deeper pain resurfaces. Elsa looks at him with a profound sense of wonder and asks why he is always so kind to her. The question strikes Vincent like a physical blow, sending him spiraling back into a state of self-loathing. He questions when he was ever truly kind, convinced that the kind Vincent she remembers is not the man standing before her now. He believes that she is merely projecting the image of a lover from her past life onto him, using him as a stand-in for someone he can never be. The bitterness in his heart overflows as he tells her to stop, insisting that the Vincent she is hoping for doesn't exist in this world. He claims that he is not the man she expects and that he has never been that person from the very beginning. This rejection drives Elsa into a fresh fit of sobbing, and as she buries her face in her hands, Vincent reaches out to pull her into a natural, instinctive embrace. Even as he holds her, he feels the crushing weight of his own hypocrisy. He loves her deeply, yet he continues to hurt her with his careless words and his jealousy of the man he used to be. He reflects on how he has disappointed her more than anyone else could, driving a metaphorical knife into her heart on purpose out of his own insecurity. Elsa pulls back slightly, her voice rising in a defiant declaration that shakes him to his core. She argues that he has simply met her in a different form and order, but that Vince is still Vincent. She boldly states that she loves him too, regardless of his lack of memory or his internal struggles. Vincent reacts with a mix of flustered irritation and disbelief, wondering what kind of man would be happy to hear that he is loved, along with someone else. He snaps at her, his face flushing red as he expresses his frustration at being compared to his past self, yet even as he rants, he feels the stubborn knot of tension in his chest beginning to unravel. A single word from her has done what he could not do for himself in years of brooding. Elsa gently suggests that they finally make up, acknowledging that being compared to someone else must have been painful and promising to be more careful in the future. Vincent falls silent, his mind racing through the expectations of his lineage and the heavy burden of his duties as a duke. He realizes that throughout his life, he has only met the expectations of others, but Elsa is the one thing he has chosen entirely for himself. He bows his head and offers a sincere apology, admitting that he should have been the one to speak first instead of making her bear the weight of their reconciliation. Elsa is taken aback by his sudden change in demeanor, asking if he is truly apologizing for their fight. Vincent confirms it, but adds a final, cryptic note. He does not want to go back to how things were. This statement sparks a final moment of panic in Elsa, who fears that nothing has actually changed and that he is still pushing her away to protect her from his perceived fate. She shouts at him, demanding to know why he apologized if he still refuses to let her stay by his side. Vincent, now thoroughly flustered and blushing, shouts back to clear up the misunderstanding. He confesses that back then he never actually said a single word about being hurt by her. The admission leaves them both breathless, the air thick with the realization of their mutual vulnerability. As the chapter closes, Elsa clings to him, her face buried against his chest, as she asks if it is truly okay for her to stay by his side forever. She collapses against him, not from pain, but from the overwhelming sense of relief that the distance between them has finally vanished. Vincent's hand presses firmly against Oriana's brow, his expression twisting into immediate alarm as the radiating heat confirms his worst fears. Oriana lies slumped against the plush upholstery of a high-backed sofa, her eyes half-lidded and glazed while sweat beads along her hairline. She barely registers his presence, her mind drifting back to the early morning when a subtle wrongness first began to gnaw at her senses. The realization that a fever has finally overtaken her comes with a heavy sense of inevitability. As Vincent hovers over her, his silhouette dominating the dimly lit room, he announces his intention to check her temperature more closely, his voice tight with a mixture of concern and authority. Oriana attempts to wave him away, her movements sluggish and weak as she urges him to simply go home. She insists she will follow once she regains her composure, but the rasp in her breath betrays her. Vincent's patience snaps instantly. He looms over her, his gaze sharpening with indignation as he asks if she truly believes him the type of man to abandon someone suffering. He recognizes her hesitation as a byproduct of his own usual demeanor, yet he refuses to let her pride dictate her safety. The infirmary's closing hour approaches rapidly, leaving no room for further debate. Before Oriana can offer another protest, Vincent lunges forward, his movements swift and decisive. He scoops her small frame into his arms, hoisting her up in a sudden, jarring lift that sends her world spinning. Oriana shrieks in shock, her hands flying up to cover her face as she flails against the unexpected contact. She stammered out frantic questions, demanding to know what he thinks he is doing, but Vincent ignores the outcry. He steadies his grip, his face set in a grim mask of determination while he navigates the room with his burden. Oriana's panic only intensifies as she realizes the sheer recklessness of his actions. She buries her face in her palms, hiding her burning cheeks while she mutters about the danger of such a stunt. Vincent remains unmoved by her embarrassment, countering her protests with the blunt observation that she is clearly unable to walk. He adjusts his hold, promising to touch her no more than is strictly necessary to reach their destination, yet his proximity remains overwhelming. Oriana whimpers into her hands, the impossibility of the situation crashing down on her as she feels the rhythmic strength of his stride. Desperate for an escape, Oriana begs him to call for Miguel instead. She promises to let Miguel carry her properly if only Vincent will set her down and fetch him. The suggestion causes Vincent to stall, his brow furrowing as he processes her sudden preference for another man. He looks down at her with a flicker of hurt crossing his features before his resolve hardens once more. He ignores the plea for Miguel, his jaw tightening as he continues toward the door, leaving Oriana to sob quietly against his chest. The physical strain of the carry begins to show as Oriana remains stiff and uncooperative in his arms. Vincent huffs, noting that she is becoming difficult to hold in such a rigid position. He commands her to wrap her arms around his neck for stability, warning that she might fall if she refuses to help. Oriana recoils at the suggestion, her voice cracking as she insists she has reached her absolute limit. She trembles, her entire body vibrating with the effort of resisting the intimacy he demands. As they move through the corridors, Oriana's insecurities bubble to the surface. She frets over her appearance, convinced she looks like a panda with blotchy foundation and a total mess of hair. She claims her makeup has surely come off, rendering her unsightly. Vincent stops in his tracks, looking down at her with an expression of pure, unadulterated sincerity. He declares her always adorable, his voice dropping to a soft, earnest tone that cuts through her frantic rambling. Oriana reacts as if struck, calling him a liar and accusing him of merely trying to comfort her. She begs him to stop saying such things, her face flushing a deeper shade of crimson than the fever alone could cause. Vincent sighs, conceding to her discomfort by promising to avoid looking at her face if it will make her comply. He repeats his request for her to hold on to him, and finally, her resistance crumbles. She leans her head against his shoulder, her breathing hitching as she finally falls silent, though she continues to murmur Miguel's name in her delirium. Vincent's expression darkens at the name, a flash of jealousy or perhaps deep-seated regret clouding his eyes as he realizes the girl's dorm is far too distant for her current state. Upon reaching a place of rest, Vincent confers with a figure named Danzane regarding the paperwork for her stay. Danzane observes that while her physical symptoms mirror a common cold, she appears mentally and physically exhausted beyond the norm. He questions if something has been bothering her lately. Vincent remains silent, his gaze fixed on Oriana's sleeping form. The weight of guilt settles over him as he realizes he is likely the primary source of the stress that has broken her health. Instead of being her caretaker, he has become her burden. Alone in the room, Vincent sits by her bedside, watching the erratic rise and fall of her chest. He reaches out, his fingers hovering near her face before he pulls back, struck by his own perceived immaturity. He berates himself for acting so childishly around her, failing to provide the stability she truly needs. Oriana stirs in her sleep, her lips parting as she whispers his name. A small, tragic smile touches her face as she dreams, her hand reaching out to find his in the darkness. She murmurs about how much she missed him, her voice thick with a longing she would never confess while awake. Vincent leans in closer, his heart heavy as he listens to her subconscious confessions. She speaks of searching for him for so long, of finally finding him after an eternity of separation. The depth of her attachment is laid bare, and Vincent can only watch with a pained expression. He realizes that no matter how much he wishes to change things, there will never be a day when she does not seek him out. The honesty of her dreams reveals a bond that defies the simple reality of their daily interactions. As the night deepens, Oriana's dream turns toward apology. She gasps out apologies to Vincent, her face contorting with a grief that transcends her illness. Vincent takes her hand, his thumb stroking her knuckles in a soothing gesture as he tries to quiet her spirit. He whispers that he wanted to save her, his own voice breaking with the weight of unspoken promises. He apologizes to Elsa, perhaps a name from a past he struggles to reconcile with the girl lying before him. He laments not going to her sooner, his mind consumed by the if-onlys of their shared history. He reflects on the persona he maintains, the Vincent she expects to see, and the internal struggle of playing a role that no longer fits. Even now, the sight of her regret causes his chest to tighten with a physical ache. He leans over her, his shadow blanketing her as he softly assures her that he is right there and there is nothing more to worry about. Oriana's eyes flutter open for a brief moment, questioning his presence with a fragile hope. He confirms he is with her, his voice a gentle tether to reality. Vincent brushes a stray lock of hair from her forehead, his touch lingering with a tenderness he rarely allows himself to show. He hushes her, urging her to return to sleep as he stands guard over her recovery. He reflects on the day she revealed the truth of her past life, acknowledging that he should have spoken his heart then. He knows now what he should have told her, that even if she returned with every memory intact, her fate was never her fault. He wants to strip away her sense of duty and mission, to tell her that she owes nothing to the dead. As the moonlight spills across the room, he watches her settle into a deeper, more peaceful slumber, his final wish for her remaining simple and profound. He only wants her to be happy. Marcel stands within the opulent hallway of a grand estate, holding a letter that marks the 60th correspondence received from a persistent young woman during the current school vacation. He recites the contents of the parchment to his young master, Vincent, detailing how the sender managed to acquire the specific fabric she had been eyeing at a bargain price. The letter continues with mundane but cheerful updates about her time away, mentioning how she and a companion named Yana gathered balsam flowers to dye their nails a lovely shade, expressing a wistful desire to show the results to Vincent in person. Vincent listens with a stoic, unreadable expression as he stares out of a window framed by heavy curtains and classical paintings, while Marcel encourages him by suggesting that today might finally be the day he chooses to pen a reply. Behind the scenes of this quiet morning, other members of the household staff gossip about the lopsided nature of this relationship, whispering that Lord Vincent has never actually written a love letter and might simply be too shy to start now. Another servant counters this optimistic view, asserting that Vincent likely has no intention of writing back because he lacks any romantic feelings for the girl. Amidst this speculation, the household prepares for shifts in residency, as Master Miguel is scheduled to move to the townhouse in the royal capital the very next day. Miguel also plans a visit to Lady Elsha's estate, further complicating the social web surrounding the young nobles. Across the kingdom of Anesel, the social season coincides with the 3 months of mid-autumn through early winter, prompting the Largen Magic Academy to go on a long vacation. Students from distant regions utilize the magically powered train lines to return to their family domains. On the 3rd day of early winter, a relaxed and casual Miguel leans against the doorway of a train car, casually smoking a cigarette as he inquires about the current date. Upon learning the time, he calculates that a letter sent immediately would reach Vincent within 2 days. He calls for pen and paper, deciding to facilitate the communication that Vincent seems unable or unwilling to manage on his own. The train rattles along the magic railway, traversing the vast distance from the Purple Dragon domain toward Oriana's location. When the correspondence finally arrives at the capital, Oriana erupts with pure, unbridled joy, clutching the envelope and spinning in circles while exclaiming that a reply from Vincent has finally come. Her friend Yana watches this display with a mixture of amusement and mild concern, noting Oriana's completely slack, love-struck expression. Miguel enters the room shortly after, his presence a surprise to the girls. Yana wonders aloud if Vincent sent the letter specifically because it is Oriana's birthday, but Miguel quickly clarifies that the timing is a mere coincidence. He explains that he simply happened to be returning to the capital from his home and brought the letter along as a favor. Despite the lack of romantic intent from the sender, Oriana remains ecstatic, having never truly expected a response at all. Miguel urges Oriana to read the letter immediately, teasing her that the butler might check the contents if she delays. While Oriana rushes off to a private spot, her friends discuss the social dynamics at play, noting the presence of Felvera, the eldest son of a count, who is acting as an escort. Oriana finds a quiet corner near a garden pavilion, where she carefully opens the envelope with a decorative letter opener. She notices a pleasant scent emanating from the paper and feels a surge of affection seeing her name, Oriana, written in Vincent's hand. As she reads, she discovers that Vincent's reply was prompted by the sheer volume of her own letters, which had begun to cause a stir throughout his domain. Vincent admits in writing that he was initially at a loss for what to say to her and couldn't bring himself to respond. However, the daily arrival of her notes made him realize he couldn't discern her true intentions. He writes with surprising honesty, setting aside sentimentality to explain his confusion. He mentions that he entrusted the letter to Miguel to ensure its privacy, fearing that the post office staff might spread the contents if sent through normal channels. Oriana is deeply moved by this transparency, finding happiness in the fact that Vincent is speaking his true feelings, even if they are somewhat blunt. The letter concludes with practical updates. Vincent plans to return to the capital in about 2 weeks, shortly before the new school term begins. He assures her that he has had a health checkup and is doing well. In a postscript that Oriana finds particularly endearing, he mentions that his breakfast that morning was a muffin topped with a slice of lemon. This trivial detail sends Oriana into a fresh fit of adoration, as she squeals about how cute it is that he went out of his way to mention his breakfast. Despite her outward joy, Oriana's internal monologue reveals a complex layer of anxiety. She acknowledges that Vincent is now treating her with the respect of a friend and using her first name, but she feels a sense of being trapped in a darkness with no end in sight. She struggles with the weight of her feelings, admitting to herself that she loves him but fears a formal confession would destroy the friendship they have managed to build. She feels as though Vincent is currently beside her as a friend, carrying half of her emotional burden, and she finds solace in that connection alone. The group settles into their vacation at the estate, where Yana's bodyguard, Azrak, spends his time in the stables learning how horses are raised in this region. He appears happy and relaxed in the company of the animals, a stark contrast to his usual stoic demeanor. The presence of Yana, Azrak, and Miguel makes the long break the most enjoyable Oriana has ever experienced. During a quiet moment over tea, Miguel begins to reveal his true reason for visiting, which goes beyond simply delivering a letter. He speaks with a sudden, serious vulnerability that catches Oriana off guard, making her fear he is about to make an embarrassing romantic confession. She panics internally, covering her ears and shouting that she doesn't want to hear it, terrified that a confession would end their friendship. The tension breaks into laughter when Miguel reveals he was actually setting her up for a joke as payback for an invitation to a pajama party that took forever to arrive. He teases her by mimicking the cute face she made, while Oriana realizes she was totally mistaken about his intentions. The evening transitions into a second pajama party, a girls' gathering where the social boundaries of nobility are momentarily set aside. Oriana, the daughter of a merchant, hosts Miguel, the eldest son of a count, and her other noble friends with fruit, wine, and flowers. As the wine flows, the conversation turns toward romance. When asked if he is secretly in love with someone, Miguel looks directly at the group and jokingly declares that he is in love with Vincent. He explains that he is simply cheering for Oriana's success in her own romantic pursuit. The girls then tease Miguel about challenging Azrak for Yana's hand, as rumors suggest that anyone who can beat the burly bodyguard can marry her. Yana joins the fun by offering special intel to anyone brave enough to try. Azrak is notoriously weak and sluggish in the mornings. Late into the night, a servant interrupts the festivities to announce that a guest has arrived at the front entrance. The visitor has refused a guest room, insisting they will leave shortly. Oriana, still wearing her floral party crown, heads to the entrance hall to find the mysterious guest. She is stunned to find Vincent himself standing there, looking back at her with a calm but expectant gaze. The shock of his sudden appearance after his letter claimed he wouldn't return for 2 weeks sends Oriana into a state of pure, hysterical happiness. Vincent, overwhelmed by her loud and energetic greeting, covers his face with a gloved hand in a gesture of mild embarrassment as the reunion begins. Elsewhere, the narrative shifts to provide context on Miguel's family life. He is seen at his own family estate, where his father, the Earl of Hydrasia, pressures him to take his future responsibilities seriously. His father insists he attend a ball at Marquis Downshire's estate to meet a young lady who has requested his presence. Miguel attempts to deflect these expectations by praising his younger brother Edward's exceptional studies and suggesting the Earl focus on him instead. This insubordination enrages his father, who reminds Miguel that he carries the blood of dragons and must inherit the earldom one day. Despite his father's failing health and fits of coughing, Miguel maintains his playful, detached persona, blowing a kiss to his mother and laughing as he departs for the capital, choosing to keep his own burdens hidden behind a smirk.